Welcome to ASM Connected, the podcast brought to you by ASM Technologies. In Series 3, we sit down with business leaders and futurists from across the globe to discuss what emerging tech means to them, how technology impacts workplace culture, and their advice to businesses on how to stay one step ahead of the competition. Ian Tompkinson chats to Öykü Işık, who is a Professor of Digital Strategy and Cybersecurity at IMD Business School. Her current work focuses on digital resilience, AI trust and transparency, as well as operationalization of digital ethics practices in organizations.
See that self-regulation does not work, especially when we look into what we see in social media, how it impacts people's trust in big tech, what we see, what's happening with deep fakes, how when not kept under control, it could end up being used in very harmful situations, right? So I do think we need a governing system for this. Yes, I do think we need regulations for this. And AI Act, however imperfect it may be, is, I think, a step in the right direction that we need to categorize. Not every AI is, of course, created equally. Some work with sensitive data, some not, right? So even coming to the decision of, okay, which of these AI systems will I consider as sensitive, and what does it look like for me to audit these systems? Who will audit these systems? How do I ensure that an algorithm, which may be the competitive advantage of an organization, is kept as such? How do I do this auditing without crossing certain boundaries, right? So these are all super valid questions. I'm not sure if there are answers for, right? But the fact that we are thinking about these things, the fact that we are in Europe banning biometric using AI systems, for instance, is, I think, a step in the right direction, gives a right message. And the question that opposes to this is always, what about innovation though? Will it kill innovation? I don't think that is the case. We have always been very resourceful, and we have always been very creative in also constrained environments in other situations, right? So I'm pretty sure we can and we should be able to find a way to also innovate under these conditions, because what these regulations do basically just put human privacy, human dignity, and our own right to control data about ourselves in the center of the development about these technologies.
Ian Tompkinson chats with Dutch Schwartz, who is Global Head for Security and Strategic Industries for Amazon Web Services. Dutch is an experienced cybersecurity professional, a boardroom certified qualified technology executive who works with some of the world's leading CISOs, advising on cloud security, security culture, and leadership.
Why don't I ask ChatGPT what would be a good question to ask a guest on the podcast? So I put in there, what is a great question to ask a cybersecurity expert? And this is what it came up with. And I'd be really interested to gather your thoughts on this. So again, this is ChatGPT. And the question was, what are the key security considerations that organizations should take when migrating their data and applications to the cloud? And how can they ensure the security of their data in the cloud environment? Now, that's probably quite generic, because I think that's where ChatGPT goes. And then you obviously engage with it further. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've played around a little bit as well, right? I think we all have. It's really interesting. And at least the handful of times I've put my hands on the keyboard and asked it questions, when you ask it straightforward questions like that, it comes up with pretty reasonable either responses or answers or further questions, depending on how you word it. I think it tends to get more interesting when you ask it more and more specific questions, right? And as you give it context. So I know that a theme that I've seen others using, I think just again for fun, is saying, act as if I am a, insert, type of job here. And then you keep asking it questions and say, give me a more unusual answer. Give me something that wouldn't be so obvious, and you'll get to sometimes silly, but sometimes really interesting, takes on that. So I think that's a great question. And really the question behind that, right? When we talk about digital transformation, which is really the sort of the movement we're in here, right? And cloud Again, I say cloud like in the big term, that's one of the technologies, right, that is really driving or helping enable digital transformation. And so when we think about cloud solutions in general, it's important to understand, why are you moving this thing to the cloud? That's really kind of the underlying question, right? And that will then drive what the security is for that. And in other words, a lot of times a movement towards a cloud solution may be done at the board level or an executive level, and not necessarily initiated, if you will, by the chief security officer or chief information security officer, depending on the title. And so that's the first question. This is not vendor specific, but that would be the first question I have just about the transformation. What is it? Why are you moving either this workload, this piece of data, this web application, whatever the thing is? Why are you moving it to the cloud, and what do you hope to get from that, right? Because then you have a more of a business discussion around innovation, flexibility, speed, right? So then you have to go into the, it's easy for anybody who's a technologist to get right down into the tech, right? Hands on keyboard and zeros and ones. And I've been doing this for a long time. It doesn't really matter of what domain. I've been in networking and data in different areas. And it always happens because it's your passion, right? And so you can get tactical really fast, right? Which may be fun to talk about. But and when you're talking with the board and executives, what you really want to come back to, if you will, is, what are we trying to gain from this? Right? Is it speed? Is it flexibility? Is it scale? Is it innovation? And then that will drive how you think about, well, now how do I secure that? Like with that as the kind of direction that we're headed. So if I was talking to ChatGPT live, that would be my answer.
Ian Tompkinson chats to Roland Emmans, who is head of technology sector and growth lending at HSBC, about the technologies that are appealing to investors and how technology adds value to enterprise organisations. Roland is also a Tech Nation Advisory Board member and UEL Centre of FinTech Strategic Advisory Board member.
Question around that is, where are these new emerging technologies, whatever you want to call them, whether you want to go all the way to quantum or whether you want to think about robotic process automation or AI or machine learning, machine learning is probably more heading into the mainstream than any of the other things. How overhyped are they? Are they being used in reality? Yes, some of them are. Have they got fantastic use cases? Yes, they have. Are they mainstream? No, they're not. But if I just park that for a second and go back to digital transformation, if you ask 10 people what digital transformation is, you'll probably get 11 different answers, because nobody really knows what it means. And it means something different to everybody. Too many people think of it as, I've got to go and spend 5 years and 50 million quid on a shiny new ERP system. And when actually it could be as simple as just moving something onto an app off a paper-based system. So let me revert back to the question. Some of this technology is absolutely overhyped, massively. The hype cycle will lead to, at some point, if people continue to invest in it, technology continues to improve, it will get really, really good. It's not there yet. Part of the problem around things like AI, bias, which we're all relatively aware of, unstructured data. Most organizations, mine and probably yours, most of our corporate knowledge, corporate wisdom, if there is such a thing, is probably sitting in our inboxes or sitting in Word documents on servers that's unstructured, that is really hard for those clever algorithms to go and learn from. So I think human beings are pretty important, because at the end of the day, we are the bits that are going to digest the systems.
Ian Tompkinson chats to Terence Bennett, the General Manager of Dream Factory Software, discussing cybersecurity, emerging technologies and innovation within the tech sector.
We don't want to restrict innovation. So how can the enterprise have a strategy that enables them to run with emerging technology, but also offering robust protection? And I know I'm not going to get a simple answer to a very complex question like that, because that doesn't tend to be the case. But endpoints, be it IoT, be it a user, the more and more sort of spaces we create, the chances are that we're going to create more of a space for someone to get into. So how do we control that?
It's interesting question. I think often the answer is to work with trusted vendors who have thought through these problems and thought through how to maneuver in this new space in a way that is that's responsible and thoughtful and deliberate, right? I mean, the only other option really is to try and hire those people into your team and do it, right? And I think the other thing is, frankly, to be deliberate about what you choose to implement within your system. I think what can get dangerous and just as a waste of money is kind of running after every new seemingly exciting technology and thinking that if it's new and exciting, you need it within, to kind of add on to your product, right? I mean, the joke in the Valley for a long time has been every new startup is like such and such with AI, with ML, right? It's like we're going to just sort of tack on this ML engine next to onto like a boring product, and it's going to suddenly be cool and new. And it's obviously not that simple. And a lot of those companies are failing right now because they actually didn't have anything special or unique. So I think the question is to go back to first principles, and if you're a leader in your company and the company is looking to you for that strategic guidance, is really go back to first principles and ask that question on like, what is our strategic advantage and how would this help? And if the answer isn't something profound, then maybe it's worth just letting it go and not worrying about it for the time being, right? Revisiting in a quarter or two. And so like, I think this sort of race that we're seeing right now with regard to AI is a really interesting one. There's obviously a million startups popping up left and right using OpenAI's ChatGPT and GPT-3 and soon to be GPT-4. I think a lot of companies need to kind of slow down and just ask, like, okay, how does this change the market? How does this change our environment? And does it actually change what we're doing, right? OpenAI has been around for some time, right? The only reason everyone's so excited about right now since November 30th or whatever it was because of the chat tool that kind of made it more interactable. But these models have been around, and there's companies who've been figuring out how to use it to add value. So I think it's maybe about even slowing down a little bit in what feels like a really kind of chaotic and crazy rushed world, and asking these deep questions around like, what does this actually change? How does this actually affect my business?
Ian Tompkinson chats to Kamales Lardi, thought leader, best-selling author, and keynote speaker.
Have we got any evidence as yet that with blockchain that the ROI is there in general? Or is there another way of looking at the benefits, such as user experience, trust, and intangible value?
When I work with organizations and with institutions, be it government or private, I always like to bring in the view that when we look at ROI, when we look at returns for emerging technology solutions, it's not as straightforward as let's implement a tech and then there's an outcome or a financial outcome or a commercial outcome to it. Some of these technologies, particularly if you think about blockchain or even AI-based solutions or metaverse and so on, they are still in almost an exploration phase. So the returns may not necessarily be as straightforward as we would imagine. So one of the things that we really try to do is link the initiatives or link these transformation initiatives to business objectives. And I think this is a fundamental thing that every company needs to do. Look at what you're trying to achieve as a business and identify value propositions that you will deliver from that, whether it's customer experience, whether it's financial returns, whether it's engagement, whether it's products and services or optimization within your business environment. You want to link those back to your business objectives and deliver or create solutions based on these technologies that deliver to those KPIs. And I mean, with blockchain technology, they're still in a stage, many organizations are still in a stage of building solutions or exploring solutions. So the financial returns or the ROIs are not as prominent as we'd like to see it, how many years on, 10, 12, 15 years on. But what I think is also important to understand is the technology itself hasn't reached a stable outcome or output. The infrastructure is still being developed. It's still transforming and changing. And these technologies are not like previous technologies. They're not something that can be developed by one company and a solution produced by one company. Blockchain technologies' value comes from an entire industry applying these technologies and really making or creating benefits, mutual benefits across the industry for all players. That's when you really start to see ROI coming in.
Thanks for listening to this episode of ASM Connected. If you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe now to make sure you never miss an update, and check out the other episodes in the series. To find out more about the team at ASM Technologies, visit asmtech.com. This is ASM Connected.